On this question, we could go back and look and do the calculator trick that I showed you on the last and go through each of these, do 60 divided by x, 84 divided by x, and 126 divided by x, and our y equals, and see a value that they share. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if these values are divisible. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to check the biggest number, of course, because we're looking for the greatest common factor. So I go 60 divided by 12, that gives me an integer. 84 divided by 12 gives me an integer of 7. 126 divided by 4 gives me, divided by 12 gives me 10 and a half. So this is not a solution because we have a decimal answer. So I'm going to move to 6. Now, if a number goes into 12, if 12 goes into a number, then 6 will have to as well because 6 is a factor of 12. So I don't need to do 60 divided by 6. I don't need to do 84 divided by 6. All I need to do is check 126 divided by 6. And 126 divided by 6 is 21. So 6 goes into each of these numbers. 6 is the largest number. There's no need to look at the other three. One thing we want to keep in mind whenever we are taking our ACT, numbers do what they're supposed to do. Even if you forget what we're supposed to do with exponents, the number 3 times 4 is 3 times 4. So 3 times 4 is going to be 12. So we're down to just those two answers there, and this is the problem. When we multiply, the question is, what do we do with the exponents? Do we multiply them or do we add them? Well, when we are multiplying, when we're multiplying numbers, we add their exponents. When in doubt, try to plug in the number 3 in your calculator and see what it becomes. You can always check this out. This should equal the same amount as 3 times 12. This is one that we will also take to our calculator, and I'll show you how we can get our answer here. So 7 and 5 do make 12, so this is 12 into the 12th power. So we're going to go ahead and check our answer from the second example. We can also get an answer this way as well. So the equation originally said 4n to the 7th power times 3. And we don't use the letter n, don't hit alpha and put in n. Your calculator is going to be confused by this amount. So let's go ahead and look at two answers. We'll look at the answer that was wrong. We knew that 4 times 12 was, or 3 times 4 was 12. And if we multiply our exponents, here's what I'm doing. You can see I'm putting in the original equation and then the equation I think the answer is. And if I look at the table, if it's the correct answer, their tables are going to match identically, which you can clearly see. They've got some matching points, 0s and 12s, but after that, they start to deviate pretty considerably. And you can see back as well, these tables are not the same. So that means that this is an incorrect answer. So let's look what the correct answer, which would be, in this case, J. We're going to replace the 35 with a 12. And then we're going to compare their tables. And there you can see their tables are identical in every way. Now, the only exception, I say in every way, if you have an error reading in one and it's not an error reading in the other, then it could be a rational with an excluded value or possibly a logarithm with an excluded value. Just ignore those. That's matching tables. So this is what correct answers look like. So this problem tells us that Devin bought a pair of shoes at a quarter price. The original price was $88, and then he paid sales tax of 7%. So the first thing we're going to do is see what Devin paid. Now, when we're doing this, it's a 0.25% off. So you can do one of two ways. You can find 1/4 of 88, which is 22. And then subtract that number away. Or what I like to do is if he's getting 3/4 off, 1/4 off, he's paying 3/4. So if I go 3/4 times 88, his shoes are $66. Regardless of which way you do it, that's what we have. So now he's also going to pay a 7% sales tax. So what we need to do is multiply the $66 times 1.07. Because remember, 7% written as a decimal is 0.07. So after we multiply $66 times 1.07, we learn that he has a shoe price of $70.62. And then the last sentence says he gave the clerk 4 $20 bills. So he has $80. He is going to pay $70.62. And then the last thing that we are asked is, what will he be getting in change? He's going to be getting $9.38 in change. Main thing on this, it's a 1/4% off, not a 1/4%, or 1/4, excuse me. So as we read this one, this is going to have a feel like it's a system of an equation, but it actually is not. It says Brandon is having a bake sale at school to raise $140 to donate to the local animal shelter. He sells brownies for $1 each. He sells cookies for 50 cents each. So we're highlighting the important information. Given that Brandon sells 82 brownies, so you see brownies are not a variable, we know what it is. And all sales go to the, and all the sales go to the donation. How many cookies does he need to sell in order to reach his goal? Well, let's figure out how much money he has already. Well, we're at $140 needed to be raised. He has sold 82 brownies. Well, 82 brownies at $1 each means that he has made $82 of his 140. So we subtract 82 from 140. And the remaining amount he needs to make is $58. And you've got to be careful, because there you see that answer right there. But it doesn't ask how much does it need to make, or how much does he need to sell. It says how many cookies does he need to sell. Well, the cookies are 50 cents a piece, so he's going to have to sell 2 of these to make $1, so we need to make it double the amount. He needs to sell 58 times 2, which is 116. He needs to sell 116 cookies because he is $58 short. So a lot of times this happens on your ACT. Your instructions at the top are a description of what you see in the bottom. So if you can fill this thing out without reading, that's a possibility. But we're probably going to have to go back and read. We need to know something about this triangle. First things first, vertical angles are always equal. So if this is 38 degrees, this is 38 degrees. Now, we cannot find this unless we know the other two, which means we need to hope that this is an isosceles triangle. So let's see, does it say AB is congruent to BC? Yes, it does. So we do have an isosceles triangle. This side is equal to this, which means this angle is equal to that angle. So we do have an isosceles triangle with 2 angles that are 38 degrees. Together they make 76 degrees. And we have a triangle, and a triangle is 180 degrees. So we need to subtract 180 degrees minus 76 degrees, the remaining angle is going to have 104 degrees. So this one says Patty, Carla, Shada, and Ling ran a race. The bar graph below gives each girl's racing time in seconds. How many of the girls ran the race in less time than the average of the 4 running times? So the average is the mean. We're going to add the numbers up and then divide by 4. I'm going to come back and show you how we can put this in our calculator as well to solve using the statistic mode, but we'll do this by hand to start. So first thing I'm doing is adding up all of these values, 81 plus 84 plus 62 plus 94 equals 321. So the average of these values is going to be 321 divided by 4. So the average is 80.25. And it asks us how many racers run below our average. Well, the only one that runs below that average, this one's really close, but it's still higher than. So the only one is Shada, so our answer is 1.
So on our practice question number 6, I told you I would show you the statistic mode. I'm going to go quickly, so make sure you watch. So I'm going to first go to Stat, and under Stat, the first option is Edit. And the first thing I need to do is fill in my numbers. My numbers are 81, and just type them in and hit Enter. 84, 62, and 94. So I type in my 4 values. Those have been stored. Just think of a process. We've got to give the information to our calculator. And then we go to Stat, and we need to calculate these numbers. So I go over 1, and this is considered one variable stat. We put our information in list 1, so make sure it does say list 1. So what I want to do now is go down and hit Calculate. So my mean is 80.25. Now I can answer the question on who is raced in less time than the 80.1. X with a line over it is the mean. If you scroll down, there's your median. Don't need that on this question, but since we've done it, might as well take a look.
This is a question that I think they're going to try to trip you up and not measuring the right way. I think they're going to, you got to remember there's 60 minutes in an hour. I know it's funny to say that, but some of you are going to number this wrong. So let's take a look. It says between 9 a.m. and 10:20. Well, that's an hour and 20 minutes. What's going to happen is some people are going to denote this as 120. It is an hour and 20 minutes. So we'll need to change that into minutes. We'll get to that in just a second. It says 18,000 visitors enter the Family Fun Amusement Park between the times we mentioned. An average of how many visitors per minute enter the park? Well, an hour and 20 minutes. I bet you if you put in 120, if you did 18, I'm going to do it right now actually. 18,000 divided by 120 is 150, and there it is for you right there, ready for you to make that mistake. And again, they're very good at creating common misconceptions, common mistakes, but here's what we need to do. An hour and 20 minutes is 60 minutes plus 20 minutes, so we have been in here for 80 minutes. So we're going to take our 18,000 and divide it by 80 minutes, which is 225. Just be careful that you make that conversion. A lot of times we think hour and 20 minutes, and we see this, we think of 120. So just keep your eyes open for mistakes like that. We have actually not covered vectors like we have here, but after you see this, many of you are going to probably wish that it is on the test. So this says vector u is -1, 3. Vector v is 5/8, and then it tells us to add the two vectors. Well, I like to stack and add these things. Our first vector is -1, 3, and our second vector is 5, 8, and we are adding these two values. So we add these, and this would be -1 and 5 make 4, and 3 and 8 make 11. So this is our vector 4/11. You may have a subtraction, you may have a times 2, like if we had 2v here, you would just first double both of these numbers and then add. I'm not sure if vectors are still a thing on the ACT, but if we see them, that's how we do them. I will probably take this one to the calculator just because there's a lot of button sequences that may not translate so well as we do these. But the way I'm going to do this, it says Juan and Z are painting a room in the city recreation center. Okay, that's great. They started with 5 gallons of paint. On the first day, Juan used half a gallon, so half a gallon is gone. And Zia used 1 3/4 gallon. How much paint is left after this? Well, here's some things you may not know. You probably know, typing in 5 minus alpha y equals. Alpha y equals, the first option is just the fraction mode. So that's easy. We put that in there and we go 5 minus 1/2. Well, what you probably haven't used is if you do the same sequence, alpha y equals, option number 2 is the mixed fraction mode, U N D. So I can actually type this to look exactly like that one. So we go 1 3/4. So when I do this, my calculator actually is going to spit out to me and say 11/4. Well, if you forget everything, don't forget these are numbers. You can work through decimals. Decimals will work as well. One of these answers is a decimal answer. But here's another thing your calculator does. If you hit alpha, y equals, option number 3 turns an improper fraction into a improper fraction into a mixed, then back and forth. So all I need to do is hit enter, enter, and it changes my answer to 2 3/4. I'll probably put that one on a calculator so you can see the button sequence as well.
So here's how we're going to add our fractions. So here's how we're going to add our fractions. On the painting one, we have 5 minus alpha 1 y equals 1/2, 1/2, minus, here's the part you may not be familiar with, alpha y equals, and then the second option is the mixed fraction, 1 3/4. So now I hit enter, and you see it gives me the improper fraction of 11/4. If I want to change this to a mixed fraction, all I need to do is hit alpha, y equals, and then the third option transfers back and forth from improper to mixed. So once I hit enter here, you can see it says answer. I hit enter, and it's going to convert it to 2 3/4.
This is another one I'm going to put in my calculator for my own good, just because I like to put the pressure off myself and on my calculator. But here's what this says. The point 4R lies on this graph in the standard XY coordinate planes. What is R? Well, what this is basically telling me is the X value is 4. So I'm going to go to the equation and I'm going to plug in for X the value 4 in order to see what Y is, because Y is our output value. So this is -12 plus 2. Y is an output value of negative 10. I'm going to graph that and look at the x value for 4 and just see what the y value is.
I'm going to take this to y equals, and I'm typing in negative 3x plus 2. And remember, I was interested in to see what the value of 4 was for this equation. So once I have it in, all I have to do is hit second table and then go identify the number 4. And you can see that 4 equals negative 10.
All right, I'm going to talk a couple of strategies with you. The straightforward one on this is to just treat our input and output values. It says Sebastian programs his computer to evaluate a linear function. Good for Sebastian. We're not going to read that again. But he doesn't say what the function is. When he enters an 8, that is an input value. The output value is 6. So we can call x and y. So when he enters an 8, a 6 comes out. And when he enters a 12, a 9 comes out. Which of the following expressions explains what the calculator will display when any number n is entered? So the correct way we should do this is we evaluate the change in y. Well, y went up plus 3 at the same time that x went up plus 4. This is a linear function, so what we do is we do the change in y over the change in x. So this is the slope of our line. Since this is the only one that has that, that is the correct answer. Now, another strategy we may want to do on this. We get lost on that. See which one of the equations are not right. So when 8 is plugged in, 6 should come out. Okay, well, 8 minus 2 is 6, but it also says when 12 goes in, 9 should come out. Well, 12 minus 2 is not 9, so that answer's wrong. And we also have here, the next one says minus 3. Well, 12 minus 3 is 9, but 8 minus 3 is not 6. So we could take this to our y equals, or continue to plug in values, as a matter of fact, and see which one of these work. When I plug in an 8 to this equation, a 6 should come out. If it works, then try the 12. But this should be the only one that this works on. But I'm going to take it to my graphing calculator in a little bit later so you can see and we can look at the tables instead of doing all this work on our own.
So I'm going to check number 11 and see which one of these equations work. 3/4 is actually the correct answer, and it's A. But I'm going to plug in a wrong answer just to show you what that looks like as well. So I'm going to go and put in answer B, which is 4/3. 4 over 3 x n. So n is x. So our example said when 8 went in, 6 came out. So I'm going to scroll down and take a look. And you see when 8 went in, 6 did not come out. It's the reverse. 6 and 8 is one that goes in, but this is not what it asked for. There's no reason to look at 9. See, 9 does work, but they both have to work. So when we go back and we change this to the correct answer, 3 and 4, 3/4, and I go back and I look at my table, when 8 went in, 6 should come out. There it is right there. And when 12 went in, 9 should have come out, which it did right there. So this is how we can get our answers when we have our input values as well, checking equations against actual values.
This is another one that I'm going to put in my calculator. But all they're basically telling me to do is plug in -5 to this function. I will almost guarantee you that this is the type of plug-in there where it's going to be. And if you do not put the parentheses like I've highlighted here, you're going to miss it. If you type in -5 squared into your calculator, this is going to tell you -25. Because what you told your calculator to do is square the number 5 and then add a negative sign to it. or multiply times -1, which is not what we're doing here. We're doing 25 squared, or excuse me, 5 squared, -5 squared, and then we are multiplying times -4. So -5 squared is positive 25. Positive 25 times -4 does equal -100. And we will put that in our calculator and we can evaluate that as well. This example asks us to use the equation y equals -4 x squared. I really like using this particular one. It might take a little longer than it did by hand, but you're not going to make the odd or negative substitution errors because you're putting it all on your calculator. So all I do is I type it in and I hit second table. They're interested in an input value of -5. What is the output value when the answer is -5? So this would be -5 100, which is G on our selection choice. And another one we're going to put in our calculator under the y equals. This is really one that I would want to do this one on. But we'll do this by hand as well. Parentheses, parentheses, parentheses. It's all about parentheses. So if I put in -1 for my two x's, because I have two x's, so it has to be plugged in every time we see an x, this equation would look this way. At this point, you should be able to put this straight into your calculator. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Negative order of operations, I've got to do these exponents first. So -1 squared is 1, so that's down there. And -1 cubed, like we see here, -1 cubed is -1. So we have 4 times -1, that's -4. Minus 2 times 1, 2. So what we get here is -4 minus 2, which is -6. We will also show you that on a calculator. This one, we have to discover when x is -1, what is the output? So I'm going to do the same thing as the last example we did, which is to go to y equals and type in exactly what I have. 4x to the third power minus 2 x squared. And I really like using it on this one because we have multiple variables. So it's a lot less plugging in because it's no plugging in. We hit second table. They're interested in the value of -1. So all I do is scroll down to where -1 is, and -1 as an input value has -6 as an output value. And that's all we need to do. This one says, what is the area in square units of the figure? In the figure below, all angles are right angles. The side lengths are given in yards. Well, what we've got to do is break this down into two shapes. It's completely up to you what you want those shapes to be. You could break it into a small rectangle here and a larger one there. This rectangle here is 9 by 10. We'll color coordinate this. This blue triangle that I've got here is 9 by 10, which is 90. And then this small figure here is 4 by something. We know how tall it is, but we don't know how wide it is. Well, we know from here to here is 11, and from here to here is 9. So the amount that's missing is 2. So the area of this section is going to be 8. 90 plus our 8 is 98. All right, this one's dealing with a lot of reading skills. So let's just take a look and see what the question's saying. It's asking us about the slope and the y-intercepts. This one says the slope is negative and the y-intercept is negative. Well, I would agree that the slope of this line is trending negative, so that checks. But the y-intercept is clearly going to be up here in the positive, and this is saying it's negative, so that's false. B, it says the slope and the y-intercept are both negative. Well, we just established that the slope was negative, so that's wrong. It says the slope is negative and the y-intercept is positive. That is our correct answer. I never feel good about these reading because I'm not a very good reader. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses. I want to read through the other ones and just make sure I have a reason to drop them. This is a poor strategy because I'm not managing time, but this is my weakness is reading. All right. It says the slope is positive. That's wrong. Don't need to read anymore. The slope is 0. So now I feel great about this. And again, know your strengths and weaknesses. You may know, you may be a good reader. I am not. I need to, I'll be thinking about this question because my reading skills are not as strong. And I don't want to be thinking about another question as I move on. So if you have the same weakness as me, you may want to read through those and mark them out. It's worth it. It's worth the 6 seconds I spend for the peace of mind for me. All right, this one is kind of a tiered question. It says, given this equation, then we're going to take information we have from the first and plug it into the second. And obviously that information is the x value. This one can be done as a gather and graph, but really I think this one is going to be better off for us to solve. But I am going to plug this one into my calculator just to make sure that I feel good about this answer. So we have 4x plus 2 equals negative 10. I'm going to subtract the 2 away, which would give me negative 12. And then I'm going to divide the 4 away, which will give me an x value equal to negative 3. And surprise, surprise, we're about to square a negative number. Guys, this is a retired version of the test. That means they actually gave this. And this is the third time in 16 questions that we have squared a negative number. You must remember to put this in parentheses. This is a skill we need to know. Now, if you were to graph this thing, we take that out of our own hands here. So we are going to plug in negative 3 as an answer here, for our substitution, excuse me, for x. Negative 3 squared is 9. 5 minus 9. And if you're thinking, well, I thought the absolute value couldn't be a negative. The output of an absolute value cannot be negative. You can take the absolute value of a negative. The value is always going to be a positive number. And in this case, it's the number positive 4. On this example, we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to first gather and graph. I might as well. I've got my calculator here. So it says 4x plus 2 equals negative 10. I'm going to even be lazy. And I'm going to do 4x plus 2. And I need to move the 10 over to the other side. So I would do that by adding 10 to both sides. Even though those are like terms, your calculator doesn't care. It's going to do it for you. So we type in this equation, and I'm going to see where it has a value, y value of 0. So it has a y value of 0 at negative 3, as you can see in our table. So now I could write that down. My input value for the other equation is negative 3. I'm going to go back to the home screen and then just type in my equation just like it was. You actually could, let's do this actually, you actually could put this in your calculator. If you look under math, numbers, it is the first option, absolute value. And we're going to type in the equation 5 minus x squared. And this is going to give me all the possible solutions to this. But I know good and well the only one I'm interested in is negative 3. So I'm going to turn the equal sign off of the other one so it won't show up when I go to the table. So I hit second table. I'm interested in the value negative 3. There it is. Negative 3 equals 4. So again, you saw me do this by hand, but putting it in my calculator takes all the pressure off me,
and it just reaffirms my answers as I go through this.